Should we do like an official intro here?
Sure. Seems like a good idea.
Back to the United We Talk podcast, where we talk politics. Beth and I here see different views, different perspectives on things. We all live in a bubble, and we live in different bubbles, so we see different things. So we are here to share what we see and what we make that mean about the world. And we have an election coming up in this country very shortly. I don't know if you've noticed.
I have, yes.
Interesting. Yeah. I think there's a lot of money being spent on these elections. So it seems it's all over. Yeah. So what's your latest? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in your feed these days? What are the stories that are?
Well, this is not in my feed so much as it is in my mailbox. Like I live in Ohio,
Okay.
where our Senate seat is highly contested right now. And I almost
Is that JD's Senate seat or which? No,
no,
he's a senator, right?
it's Sherrod Brown's Senate seat. Sherrod Brown has been a senator in Ohio for quite a while. He's a Democrat. He's very progressive, populist, like very popular.
Okay.
And the Republicans really, 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 really want that seat. Really, really, really.
They do. I'm assuming the Democrats really, really, really want that seat too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Democrats really want to keep that seat.
Yeah.
The Republicans have spent, I think the last number I saw was $55 million targeting Sherrod Brown. And
Okay.
I get mail nearly daily, like targeting him, like promoting his competitor. What's the word? Opponent. Yes, thank you. That's the word. Bernie Moreno, who's his net worth is something like $177 million. Like he's super rich. He's pouring a lot of his own money into the race. And the mail we get, I should have brought, it's all in the recycling, but it's so vitriolic. Like it's just really intense on both like targeting Sherrod Brown and it's really interesting. So like, going to my mailbox these days is like, wow, I wonder what nastiness is going to be in there today.
Oh no.
So it's just an interesting thing about living in a contested,
where
your vote is really, really wanted. Like I think people in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, like all of these states like are getting just blasted with like the money is pouring in on both mail and television and everything else. We don't watch TV, so I don't get that. Thank God. But it's really intense. Like we've been talking about how we're feeling our anxiety levels going up. Like it's creating, the election feels like it's really creating this environment of fear in this country. So, like I'm anxious. I don't know about you, but I'm anxious.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. I got a dog. I think she got it under control.
Oh, good.
All right. So I've heard other people talk about that too, especially in the swing states, that it's just exhausting. It's so much. And it is. I was talking to Naomi about that over the weekend here. It is so emotionally driven.
Right.
Like it's not a high rung conversation. It's not a rational, sane conversation. It's just like hitting the freaking emotions over and over again.
Yep. Absolutely.
I started reading this book from Tom Sowell. Have you read any of Tom Sowell? Did we talk about Tom Sowell?
That. I've looked at it, but I've not read any of the books cover to cover. You've mentioned, in years past. So,
yeah, I just started reading his book, Inside American Education, and it's where one of my favorite Tom Sowell comments apparently comes from. But he talks about like the degradation of American educational system over decades and how we are no longer teaching kids how to think and how to reason. It's no longer a thing. It's all, how do you feel? What do you feel is right? And here's the quote that I actually found in the book. As Professor Robinson concludes, having opinions without knowledge is not of much value. Not knowing the difference between them is a positive indicator of ignorance. In short, it is not merely that Johnny can't read or even that Johnny can't think. Johnny doesn't know what thinking is because thinking is so often confused with feeling in many public schools. So that is his indictment essentially of the schooling system, is that it doesn't teach kids what thinking is.
Right. Do you feel like
And it's like if I
okay. Were you taught how to think in your education? Your like primary
um
education?
I think so, to some extent, at least. Like we were taught, I remember, like we were taught how to analyze articles and advertisements critically. Um yeah, we were um I don't know how much of that was school system and how much of that was just home.
Mm, yeah,
My my parents and the way that they were.
right.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
It
Yeah.
is.
What was your experience?
Yeah, I asked because I think, so I'm 50. My public education was a while ago. So like decades ago. I don't know when that book was written, but like earlier. And I feel like I was only taught to think in certain classes, and particularly in like advanced classes, right? Advanced English or advanced civics or whatever. But that the bulk of my public school education was not about learning how to think critically and analyze a text or analyze something that you were being exposed to. I didn't really get it until college. Like my college did an exceptional job of, in its first year, every student had to take uh, these humanities classes. Every student in the whole college, Earlham College in Indiana, had to read the same texts and analyze them. And it was intentionally teaching you how to think critically. Like that was the whole goal. It was like, no matter what degree you're going to do or what specialty you're going to have, you have to learn how to think critically, how to analyze, how to cite your sources, how to tell what's a good source from a bad source, how to do research, like all of that. And I think that is, I don't know whether it's public education or all education, but like that should be critical. Like that kind of thing should be part of every student's education prior to college. Like we need to move that downstream so that it happens in middle school or, like eighth
Yeah.
grade. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or earlier, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it too with um but so my theory is that this is an intentional shift, that the people who are controlling the education system wants to dumb the population down so that they're more emotional and easier to control, right? They're just not as critically thinking.
When do you think that started? Like when? Because I
Least early 70s, at least, maybe earlier.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
60s, 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that our education system is not adequately preparing students to think critically and to understand how government works. Like, that's been sort of separated. I think you and I probably have very different ideas about the source of that, right? Like, I think that benefits Republicans as much as it benefits anybody else.
Well, I don't see it as Republican versus Democrat.
You wouldn't, you said, right?
No, I don't see it as Democrat versus Republican. I think it's
Right.
the state versus against the people.
Right.
Yeah. So it benefits the state
Mm-hmm.
to keep people dumb. So they
Right.
and I think that's why you see the legalization of weed and all that stuff. Like they just want people numbed out, dumbed down, so they don't rise up. So they don't ask questions. So they're easy to control. I think that's the game plan.
I don't know. I think it also benefits corporations, right? Like it very much benefits the private sector if people aren't critical.
The big corporate, not small companies like ours. Yeah,
Right. No, but big corporations, like,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that to me, that's why I talk about, in my book, I talk about the blob.
right.
All right. It's like all this confluence of interests that all want the same thing.
So another way to look at that, I think, is to think about it as big money, right? Like whether it's the state or corporations or the blob or whatever. But another way to talk about that would be to say big money, like anybody who has a certain amount of money, who has a vested interest in maintaining power over that money. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the combination of money and a lack of integrity, a willingness to bend the
Right.
what, not even the law, but what is right.
Right.
Those two things combined. Yeah, that's
Right.
yeah, for sure.
So like unethical big money or like ungrounded big money, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the big problems is that the state is, you know, kind of indistinguishable from corporations,
Corporations. Right.
regulatory capture where they control the regulatory agencies
Right.
and lobbyism where they write the laws, literally write the laws that Congress passes that nobody
Right.
has time to read and
Right.
all of
Right.
that, right? That's yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not right.
So what are you seeing in your feed lately? I kind of moved to my mailbox. We should go back
Yeah.
to our feeds maybe. Yeah.
Well, some of the things that I've been watching is um um James, so I'll just list out James O'Keefe did a documentary called Line in the Sand about the border.
Mm-mm.
Have you seen any of James O'Keefe's stuff?
I
Do you
don't
know
think
who he
so.
is?
Mm-mm. No.
Um, James is a really interesting guy. So he years ago, I think a couple decades ago, he got famous because he did some hidden camera recordings of Acorn, an organization that was around some time ago, and I think ended up being dissolved because of him and his reporting.
No, I've
You're
not heard
looking
of
at
him.
him, you're looking him up.
I am looking him up. Can you tell?
I can totally tell. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so now he's done some undercover recording, filming, and also like just journalisming along the border, which is very interesting. Like basically, so many like people are flooding across the border, cartels, trafficking humans and drugs across the border, like unaccompanied minors, and then all of these NGOs, including like Catholic organizations and churches and whatnot, that all get paid by the government to keep this whole machinery going of like people just flowing into the US from Honduras and Guatemala and Venezuela and wherever through Mexico. They're terrified of being caught by the Mexican immigration. But like once they're in America, it's easy, and like the border patrol don't have the resources to deal with it, and are not like their concerns are not being listened to. It's just like process. They just let people walk in basically. So that was pretty interesting to
What
watch.
was oh, you said it was a documentary that you watched? Yeah. I should
Yeah,
check
it's
it out.
called Line in the Sand.
Line in the
Yeah,
sand. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
There a lot of stuff came up. Uh yeah, when I
yeah.
his name, I can't read it and talk to you at the same time. But it was
No, no, no,
interesting.
no, no.
I'll have to check him out. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a lot of that. Like that's kind of his style. So now he helps people everywhere get these like little hidden cameras, and then they'll get someone. It's very often it's girls who get on dates with guys
Hmm.
who use their cuteness to go on a date with guys, and then they get them to talk about whatever.
Yeah.
There's one about Meta censoring political censorship at Meta just like
Hmm.
last week, I think. And then maybe a month back, there was the guy from New York City who was the architect behind all the crazy lockdowns. That was actually not James O'Keefe. That was what's this other guy? I forget his name. That was another guy, but that was the same tactic. Like
Okay.
cute girls,
Okay.
men are so susceptible to sex. It's crazy. Like no, but it's really a
That's
thing,
been a
right? Like
spying technique since, forever.
I
So
know,
like
I know, right? Like it really
yeah.
is. It's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, honeypotting. So yeah.
Right.
Um, the other big thing is so Candace Owens. Have you seen her stuff?
Mm-mm. I mean, I know who she is, but no, I haven't seen
Yeah.
lately.
So she was so the story is like she's like very protective of the Jackson family. So apparently Janet Jackson was out saying in an interview, someone was asking about Kamala, and she was excited. She was excited with Kamala being a black, like potentially first black president. She was like, "Is she black? I heard she was Irish or something. I'm not sure." And then there was a statement out from her spokesperson later who said, yeah, Janet misspoke and that was a mistake and she regrets it and da da da. And then Janet said, no, that person is not authorized to speak for me. I didn't misspeak. I just said what I've heard. And so based on that, Candace was like, let's actually find out what's the truth. And it turns out that Kamala has, I think, at most 1/8 black, but her mom is for sure fully Indian. her dad is mostly white, and basically her she descends from Irish Jamaicans, Irish slave owning Jamaicans. That's her heritage. So like her claim to be black is basically as close to a lie as you can get as a way to pander to black voters and be like the black. She in her book, she wrote some book that I haven't seen where she was like, "Oh, this is me with my black grandmother, and this is me with my black uncles and aunts." And it turns out that that black grandmother is decidedly not who she says. It is most likely the help, like the hired help that she had a photo with, or like probably a freed slave who was still working there that she took a photo with and claimed it was her grandmother. It's not. It's decidedly not. She lied about that. Those uncles and aunts that she claims to meet in the Bronx that are also black. In another place in the book, she says, "Yeah, they're not really my uncles and aunts. They're just some friends of my mom, but we call them my uncles and aunts." And she, in the book, there's no other photos of any ancestors other than these black people who aren't related, and it's like a blackwashing kind of thing. So Candace is like, this is like blackface. Um,
So have you, so, okay. So have you looked into like, because like, so she's done this research. I just did a quick Google and like Snopes is saying that that's complete, like Candace is completely wrong and like that's not actually true. So I haven't done any research into it, but like there's certainly a motivation for people on the right to make up that story, right? Like to come at her from that perspective. So have you done any digging to see? Because I feel like that's something I can't take Candace Owens' word for that.
no,
Like, yeah,
no, but
especially when lots of people are
here's
saying it's not true.
and again, so the point here is like we can't know what's true, right? That's what I've been following the whole investigation. She's been going at it for like 3 weeks, and I've watched every single clip of it, episode of it, and she's been like calling out to her audience. She's been finding birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, like, you know, trying to put together this whole genealogy, and been digging and asking her audience for help. And everything seems like the latest was someone who actually knew Kamala's grandmother, Beryl, who was supposedly the one in that picture, and is like, no, that's definitely not her. She was fair skinned, that grandmother, and this person is not. So I don't know what's true. Everything checks out for me. It seems to me that if this wasn't like, if this, if this is, it would be an easy thing for Kamala to debunk. Like you would imagine that she has tons of photos with her family, that she could just be like, no, here's me with this, here's me with that, da da da. It also seems like it seems clear. I mean, from what I've seen, she was definitely Indian until pretty recently. Then she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually black." Like she went by being
Oh,
Indian.
what does that mean? Like she was actually Indian. Like she was.
No, the way that she presented herself was as, "I'm Indian heritage," right? And then it changed.
Yeah. Like it seems legitimate to me to think that somebody's identity, especially if you have a multiracial or multi-ethnic or multinational identity, is somewhat fluid over time, right? Like is you like I know in my own personal identities, I have like shifted my like as my experiences evolve, so do the way I think about myself and the way I think about the way I interact with the world. So to me, that doesn't seem at all strange. Like what seems strange to me is that anybody should give a crap. Like who cares?
Here's why I think and others would give a crap is because if she has deliberately lied in her book about claiming family members to be like black people to be family members who aren't, in a way, you know, in an effort to portray herself as black in order to pander to black voters, like that to me is fraudulent. Like that's lying.
Okay.
I do take offense to that.
Okay.
Like
But
that's
we, but it, from like, again, I haven't done any digging in here, but like it seems from what Snopes is saying that Candace Owens is talking about an entirely different person than Kamala Harris is talking about. The death certificates, the picture, like all of that. The woman who died 20 years before the picture is a totally different person. Like, I think it's debunked. So, I mean, I haven't done any research yet, except for like that quick Google, but like,
yeah.
So, like, I don't think Kamala Harris should have to defend her parentage to run for president. Like just like Barack Obama doesn't need to prove his birth certificate to run for, like, I mean, well, I guess you do have to prove you're a citizen or whatever, but like
yeah. It just seems like seen that? Have you seen that though? There's another story about Barack when he wrote his first book. His publisher said he was born in Kenya.
No, I have not seen that.
Whereas I'm like, that's a weird thing. Why would he claim that he was born in Kenya if he's not?
I have no idea. But like lots of other people have looked into this and have not raised a concern about.
Wait. That's the question though. Who has looked into this? Into what? What are we talking? Like, are we talking Kamala or
I was talking about Obama's. Like,
but let's talk about Kamala. Okay. So, to me, I think it's a valid question. Did she lie about being more Black than she is in order to pander to Black voters? I think that's legit. I think that's entirely legit.
More Black. What do you mean by that? Like, did she lie in her book about who her grandparents were?
Did she? Yeah. Did she? Well, the point is, if she writes a book where she like deliberately portrays herself as being Black in a way that she's not, and she hides every ancestor who's Irish, slave owning, white, like they're not in the book. Only the Black people are.
Is that true?
I mean, that's my understanding. Like there's no non-Black relatives in that book. There's only the whites, or there's definitely no whites in that, even though a lot of her relatives were white, Irish, slave owning, well off. Like if that's true, it seems a little fishy to me. And I don't trust that the media is looking into this. And I don't trust Snopes because they've lied about a lot of things in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I guess the point you're making is that you think that if someone writes a book about themselves, if a presidential candidate, if a politician writes a book about themselves, they have an obligation to write equally about all of the people in their parentage. Like they need to describe all of their parents. If they're going to describe one, they need to describe all of them.
No.
And they need to go into depth, even though one of them might have more of an impact on them.
No. But
like that seems like
the accusation here is that she's effectively lying about being Black in order to claim, Black voters.
Yeah, but like, are Black voters that dumb? Like, no. Like Black voters look at candidates and decide like who is going to be best for their interests, right? Like it doesn't, just because someone's Black doesn't mean they're going to get a Black person's vote. Like it doesn't work like that.
I mean, like not every Black person is the same. Can we agree on that? And also, sure, of course, there's a portion of like, wasn't it a factor that Barack Obama was Black that endeared him more to certain Black to Black people and white people too, by the way? I was like, yeah, let's have a Black president, right? Like or let's have a woman president. It's definitely something I've heard a lot of people say. Like, of course it's a factor.
Sure, but it's secondary to policies. Like,
no.
Yes.
I mean, I think most people.
I am a feminist. You know that. I am a strong feminist. I would not vote for Sarah Palin. Like, there is no fucking way she would get my vote. That's just an example of somebody who ran for office, and I could have, like, people don't do that. People are not like so identity driven that if somebody matches you in some way, you automatically vote for them.
No, nobody's claiming that. I think a lot of people, it is a deciding factor. I think a lot of people don't actually look at policy. They just hear, oh, that sounds nice. And she's like, yeah, middle class, or like, yeah, more jobs, or like whatever. And then they don't actually read the policy. They don't actually evaluate pros and cons. Like that would be a high rung thing to do. I don't think most people act that way. And so it becomes part of like, yeah, woman, Black, yay.
Maybe not in depth. right? Like maybe not like printing out policies and comparing all the details and really getting into it. But there is certainly some voters put other people in context. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. My whole point here is like it's very interesting. No one else has been like she's been digging. Like it's not just like pure postulation here. She's been trying to put together her genealogy. Um, there's indications of serious uh communist roots, like deep political roots. There's like stuff about MK Ultra in there. Like her mom was in MK Ultra. Like there's some serious questions about like how like about her, where she's coming from, that to me anyway seems relevant to ask, but the media doesn't. And it's kind of interesting, like to what extent like she's asking to be president, and like it seems like we don't know a lot about her. Like versus Donald Trump, for example, we know a lot. We know exactly who his family is, every wife, ex-wife, like we know the story of his father and all of that. Like we have a lot of data, a lot of history on him. But it seems like, well, I guess I don't know how much we know about his ancestry, but he's been the public eye for a very long time. So I don't know. To me, it's like it's a relevant question.
Okay. The relevant question to you is a political candidate lying about something? Like that's what matters to you, is the integrity piece? Because I think we can.
No. It's is she pretending to be black in order to pander to black people? Is she lying about being black? She's lying about her ancestry. It's like blackface. You don't do that. You don't.
But isn't that at heart an integrity issue? Like if you take out some of the trappings of it, isn't what you're really saying is I don't know whether she is an ethical person, whether has integrity. That's what's underneath that, I think.
Yeah, I think there's categories of things. What are you getting at?
I'm trying to understand what's the real concern, because it looks. Sure, people should understand who our politicians are, right? Where they come from, like show your tax returns, show your medical records, like like those things are part of our political system, part of our political culture, right? That if you want to be president or if you want to be a senator, you kind of give up some of your right to privacy, and people have the right to ask a lot of questions about where you come from, how you've spent your money, like all of that. Totally agree with that. And agree that if someone is lying about some part of their money, their health, their origins, like whatever, that's relevant from an integrity perspective, because we want politicians who will have integrity. Absolutely. But you seem a little like triggered by the race part of it.
No, I'm not triggered, or I don't think so, but I might be. For me, the race thing is a different category. Yeah, it is. It's a different category.
I'm really curious about why.
I think it's because race is kind of fraught in this country. Like, yeah. we gotta like affirmative action. We gotta help Black people. Black people need special like equity. The whole thing, like race is like it's a special thing, and to claim for this kind of thing that you're Black if you're really not, I think that's really off-putting. I think it's yeah.
So, like, I don't know. If you zoom out and look at it,
it's insulting.
We can also, I think, you could take a step back and be like, well, race is actually, what does it actually mean, right? Like, so is she Black? Does she have Black parentage? Does she have like African blood in her veins? Like, yeah,
right.
Yeah. So like does that we can, like, that's not in question. Like what seems to be in question is, does she also have white blood in her veins? almost every African American person in the United States, almost every, has white blood in their veins. Like, look at the history of slavery. Like that's like this is a. It feels to me like it's a. It feels honestly, Calvin. It feels a little bit like the right is trying to trigger people who are race sensitive, white people who are race sensitive, who feel victimized by the way the conversation in this country has changed around race over the
So
last 30
let me
years.
ask you this question: like, why would she do that? What's the purpose from her? Why wouldn't she just be like, yeah, I'm Indian, or like, yeah, I'm Indian. There's a little bit of black in my background, but like that, like, why would she write the book? Why would she be like, I'm black? Like this whole change to being black versus Indian. Like, why is she doing that?
Well, two things. I don't, from what I've read, I don't think there's been a change. Like, I think she's always identified as both Indian and Black and Jamaican and like multiracial, multinational. So I don't think there's
Hmm.
been any change. I think when one starts running for president one is of non-white heritage, part of what happens there is people are looking to identify, right?
Hmm.
So I could see someone saying, I have all of these parts of my history, all of these parts of myself, and I bring all of
Hmm.
them to the job of being a president of the
Right.
United States. And she's been very clear about, like, I'm a president for everybody. Like, I'm here for everybody. Like, that's part of what she talks about. So I could
Yeah.
see someone saying, like, hey, let me talk about all the parts of myself
Hmm.
as I report. I don't think she's ever, yeah. So that's what I've seen from her. And
Yeah.
I don't see it as being any, like, I don't see that she's lied anywhere. Like, it's
Yeah.
assuming that all of the people who she says are her grandparents are actually her grandparents, and some of them are black, and some of them are white, and some of them are Indian. Like,
Hmm.
great, that's awesome.
Right. Okay, but if it's true that she shows someone in the book saying is her grandmother when it's not, who's black, and she shows these black uncles and aunts that are not her uncles and aunts, and she doesn't show any non-black people in that book, is that a concern?
I think it's
I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying if it is
right.
true, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's true from the little tiny bit of looking I've done. If it's true that someone who's running for president has said, this person is my grandparent and they are not, I would have a concern
Hmm.
about their integrity, not about their
Hmm.
race, but about their integrity. Just like I have a
And
shit ton of
not
concerns about Trump's integrity based on the things that he says and does. So, like,
okay.
integrity feels like the issue to me, not race.
Got it. To me, yeah, to me it's separate. Like you're lying. Oh yeah, I'm black because you want to win the black vote. I think that's disgusting on another level, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. I don't see that at all. I don't have that reaction. Like, the things that I feel like are on a whole other level are things like some of the things that he said about
So
women.
let's hear about it. What do you hear him saying?
I didn't hear it myself, but I like the Arnold Palmer stuff from the, like, when he did like a whole bunch of talking about Arnold Palmer at some rally and he made some reference to the size of the guy's genitalia. Like, that to me is like,
Who's Arnold Palmer?
what are we doing now? Why is this happening? Like, this is not part of a presidential discourse. This is not presidential level conversation.
Who is Arnold Palmer?
He's a golfer who passed away.
Oh.
Uh,
Okay, so tell me, like neither of us saw this. I don't like um
so he was giving a speech somewhere, and that somewhere was like,
but hey, before we go into the specific of it, I'm curious, like, how does that land with you? What does that mean to you?
to me, it's around, like, again, it's around integrity and ethics, and someone who is running for high office, um, having a sense of integrity and ethics, right?
So
They're
so yeah, go ahead.
that they're grounded in trying to do, that we should be focused on policy and on uh, actual governance and not like making sexual innuendos. So
So, what is the innuendo that you heard him say? Was like he had a big dick or a small dick or a
basically, yeah.
which one do we know?
Um, Yeah, I guess he talked a whole bunch about Arnold Palmer, and I have some hard time saying that for some reason. Um, yeah,
What's
and like,
the so integrity and ethics? Tell me about the integrity piece and tell me about the ethics piece.
yeah, I guess that one's more really about ethics, about appropriate. And I know that's a loaded word, right? Like appropriate is kind of value laden, but it's in context with a lot of other stuff that Trump has done. Like he's convicted of sexual assaults, you know, the grab him by the pussy stuff from 20, whenever that was. Like he has a long history of sexist and sexual behavior that I find deeply offensive, both from an integrity and an ethics perspective. For me,
Mm-hmm.
that is a much bigger concern than whether or not Kamala Harris showed all of her grandparents in that book, assuming she didn't lie about some of them being her grandparents, that she's not told any actual lies.
So the concern is what exactly in context of the Arnold Palmer, or is the concern like his past behavior?
Well, the fundamental concern, there's two concerns for me. One is around, what I just said, the concern around appropriate behavior, like having a presidential candidate who's focused on the right things and not making disparaging remarks about people. Um, the other concern, and I think part of a lot of what I'm hearing in my feed, I would imagine you're not, are concerns about Trump's like mental decline. Like, is he fit mentally to be president at this point, or are we really electing JD Vance to be president?
I've seen that a lot. I find that hilarious.
You find it hilarious because you think he's totally sane and competent.
He seems, I mean, he's in, yeah. I mean, I follow Kamala on X and I see like, there was like an event where there was like playing music for 30 minutes and they're going all in on that. Like, there was some lady with a medical emergency and he was like waiting for that to go. And like, there was like two medical emergencies in the room. That was what was happening.
No, there were two medical emergencies in the room. They wrapped up both of them. After the second one was wrapped, he did 39 minutes of swaying music and like didn't leave the stage until one of his aides came and was like, you need to walk off the stage or these people aren't going to leave yet. So
That's not what I've seen. That's not what I've seen. Like, he was
okay.
being respectful to the people in the medical emergency and figuring out what was going on. And then like they like some people left and a lot of people stayed and then they were like, you wrapped it up. But like, guys doing rallies and events and interviews and long form like all the time. I haven't seen, like, he's lots of energy. I haven't seen any decline.
That's so
They're
interesting.
like, of course he's not the same person he was 8 years ago, but like he's going strong.
That's interesting. That's not at all what I'm seeing. Like I'm hearing and seeing about the canceled appearances, the fact that he's like not willing to debate Harris again, the fact that he's basically only doing interviews with people who are going to softball, that even when he gets softball questions, he goes off on diatribes about immigration that aren't related to the question he's being asked.
It's crazy. It's crazy. He does I mean, he's gone on hostile media so many times.
When recently? Like I'm super curious.
The debates, like, CNN.
When did he like when was his last, like what I've been seeing is that he's doing interviews with, like I saw an interview he did with a woman from Fox News and it was so she spoon fed him.
But
Like
I mean, he did the L. Smith dinner, right? He does tons of podcasts where he sits down for a long time. I haven't watched all of it, but I see some of it.
he does a lot of podcasts with like bro media is what I've seen. Like people who are gonna softball. Like he's trying to target young men right now. Like he's really looking to get the young male vote. So he's really, from what I've seen, what I've heard, he's looking to be on podcasts that will show to young men. So like the Joe Rogan kind of audience. Not Joe Rogan in particular, but like that kind of audience. But those are not people who are going to give him like the hard questions, you know?
But he's taken lots of hard questions over many, many years.
Well, I mean, recently, like in the last 3 weeks, like has he done any interview anywhere that's like,
Who? So why is that relevant?
because I want to know whether or not he's mentally competent now, not 2 years ago.
No, no, but I'm saying he's done it. Like, I mean, the debate was with Kamala. Was that like,
He did a terrible job at that debate.
I mean, he got baited. I didn't think he did great, but was that like mental incompetence or what?
I mean, I think he just like couldn't stand the heat, is what it looked like to me. Like he just couldn't put together a coherent policy statement during that debate. Like he was flailing, he was triggered. Like every time she was intentionally trying to upset him, and he like
Yeah.
took the bait every single time. He's like, "Oh, let me get upset about that. Let me get upset about that. Let me
Oh,
get
he
upset
did.
about
I
that."
agree. Yeah, it was not pretty.
If he'd gone into that debate with an actual strategy and stuck to it, he could have done a really good job, but he didn't. He let himself get low runged at every single step.
I agree.
And he
I
should,
agree.
he
It
should
was
not
not
have let
pretty.
that happen. Like, I want a president who would not let that happen,
Hmm.
who knows what their triggers are and is going to be able to be like, oh, that's cute. You're trying to trigger me.
I would like that too. To me, the alternative is a president who is fully owned by the cartels, fully owned by the forces that want to let millions and millions of immigrants in, who wants to increase crime and who wants to destroy the country from within. So I'd rather have Trump.
Wow. No way. Like, Trump is like owned by Russia. And
No, fuck no.
you
Come
got,
on.
oh,
Come
come on.
on. He's so owned by Russia that Mueller investigated for 2 years,
And
and all investigators on that team deleted all records on their phones so they could never be subpoenaed. And they found fucking nothing. That's how owned he is.
you can't tell me that Trump is not compromised in some way by like money. Like he's got all of these judicial cases against him, right? He's got so little, his financial resources are depleted. Like he's looking for
Wait,
money
wait,
from
wait, wait.
us.
What are you?
And
What are
like,
you basing that on?
I mean, the court cases, he files for bank. When was his last bankruptcy filing? I don't know.
I
Yeah.
mean, they try to bankrupt him with like a $500 million fine bail or something. What was that? Like all the cases against him are completely ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're being a little too broad, right? Like, and I'm not prepared to like provide like really
No, no,
detailed
but the point again is like that's what I'm seeing. That's the story that I'm seeing is like all of these cases are completely crazy. Like the Mar-a-Lago case was, from what I've seen, is like the banks are like, yeah, we love this deal. We would do a deal with them again. Like nobody felt defrauded. Nobody was like, everybody was happy with making that mortgage, and everything's good. And then the government tries to go after him for overstating something, and the bank is like, we're fine. No one was hurt in the process. They would all do business together again. Um, the New York case where he actually got the guilty verdict is insane from what I've seen. Like they changed the law in New York for 1 year so they could go after him. I think it was the statute of limitations that they extended for 1 year so you could go after him. He's accused of misclassifying something as a legal expense, even though it did go to his lawyer. But they were saying it was a campaign contribution in order to cover up, and like he misclassified in order to cover it up an underlying crime, which normally would be a misdemeanor, but they changed that to be I forgot what but like a bad thing, a felony or something. And then the judge wouldn't allow any experts that could actually explain what was happening for like on the Trump side to come on. They wouldn't allow any kind of election campaign people to come on, and then they didn't have to. The jury didn't have to agree on what was the underlying crime that was being covered up in order to make a guilty verdict. And of course, they pick a jurisdiction where they know they can get a jury that hates his guts, and then so from everything I've seen, that was such a fabricated offense. It's insane. Like that's where he talks about lawfare. Like it's like literally no other president or candidate would be accused of something like that. Like where Hillary did use campaign funds so as I understand, like that whole Steele dossier, which was a Clinton thing to try to make it seem like Trump and Russia, something that was a clear violation, and she got a fine of like a few thousand. I think it was like $8,000 or something by comparison.
So if we zoom out a little bit, you seem to think that Trump is the only one that's not bought or that's not compromised in some way. And I'm really curious about why you would think that. Like if there is, and I don't agree that there is this deep state or that anybody else has been bought. Like I'm not with you there. But like let's pretend that there is. Why would you think Trump would be any different?
I think the strongest evidence for me is that they're trying to get rid of him so fucking hard.
But I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of him so fucking hard. I think they're trying to win the election, right? Like it's not like elections are always like this. I don't think this election is really that different.
We've never seen a presidential candidate with this many, fraudulent lawsuits against him, 3 assassination attempts. Like, no, they want to get rid of him real bad. The media is saying like he's literally Hitler and like the whole like public enemy number 1. And like, I mean, it's insane.
But he helps with that. Like he says things that are very offensive and problematic and he gets people all riled up and he from what I can see he does engage in some pretty shady business practices and I mean it seems to me like I haven't seen anything that looks faked or in bad faith against Trump.
From whom?
Like the lawsuits that we're talking about. Like I haven't seen it when I've looked at the lawsuits and it's been a while, but I haven't seen any that look to me like they're in bad faith. They all look like they've had some basis in fact and that they should in fact have been pursued. So
I mean, it's not that there's no basis in fact. Like the classified documents case, for example, like were there classified documents there? Absolutely. Were there classified documents that shouldn't have been there? Sounds likely. But like Biden has a closet full or garage full of classified, like there are classified documents everywhere, but they go after Trump. Why? There's a book that I read years ago called 3 Felonies a Day, which is making the case that there's so many felonies on the books, like 300,000 felonies plus on the books, that every single person goes through life making committing at least 3 felonies a day, everyone. And it's very useful. It's like the classic Soviet show me the man and I'll show you the crime. That's what I am seeing. That's what other people are seeing is happening with Trump. Like they're going after him, finding whatever they can find that to stick because they want to get rid of him.
And I guess I see the same thing happening. So yes, I think in politics in the US, there's definitely a bit of a gotcha thing of like people on the other side are going to try to find a way to discredit their opponent. So like the Biden documents thing, like that got raised, it got investigated. It was found that he hadn't lied about any of them. He returned them promptly. Like it's a different thing than Trump, who lied about them, hid them, like all of that. Like
hid them?
Different. Yeah, different. So
okay. I haven't seen that he hid them. I've seen that they were like he was cooperating, but they were like they went after him with guns blazing and with permission to use lethal force because they wanted that show. They wanted the drama of it.
Yeah. So what I don't remember all of the details, but what I remember was that they had requested repeatedly that he return the documents that he had at Mar-a-Lago, and he refused. He basically said, "You're going to have to come get them. Like I'm not releasing them. Like if you want them, you got to come and get them." So they went and got them, and you go armed if you're an agent going into a situation like that. Like I wouldn't go into a situation like that without, like. And I don't know the whole story there, but
there's one thing's being armed, the other is being authorized to use lethal force. That's a step above. But yeah,
I need to get that. I don't know what that looks like, but
yeah. I mean, I think to me that's plenty evidence. I mean, I'm not. Of course, he has interests. I don't see him as I don't see him as corrupted in the same way. Not at all. Not even close.
So interesting. I mean,
I see Kamala as an empty, and Biden as well as like empty vessels. There are people who in 2017 were seeing clearly that Biden was not fully there, that his dementia was working. Like, can we agree that the media was covering that up for years?
His dementia? His what now?
Yeah.
His what now?
Biden.
That's not proven.
prove, like, can we just, like, have you seen him? Did you see him in the debate? Like, he's not fully there. Can we agree to that?
Well, yeah, we can agree that he gave a bad debate. Sure, we can
No.
agree that. Like,
Oh, you think it's just that?
we can absolutely agree that he did a bad debate for sure. I will
Well,
not.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's senile. He's
I'm
like,
not agreeing to that. I've seen no evidence that he's senile.
really?
Really.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen so much evidence. Where you just look at his gait, the way he walks.
Look at the way Trump walks.
No, no, there's something that happens to your gait when your brain starts being senile.
There's other things that cause, yeah, and there's other things that cause your gait to change as you get older too. Like that's not
I'm
proof.
not saying I'm not saying his gait changed. I'm saying his gait changed in specific ways that are indicative of senility. But okay, I mean, it's a very interesting to me. It's super obvious. Like for me, it's like everybody around him in the media covered up for years. They all knew he wasn't fully there because the whole point is they want an empty vessel. They want someone who's not like will do whatever needs to happen.
I mean, to me, that just sounds like crazy talk, Calvin. Like honestly, like that, like truth, that just sounds like crazy talk. Of like,
okay,
yeah.
What do you make of?
It looks to me like Biden's he's passed lots of policies. There's been a lot of legislative efforts. Like he's given plenty of speeches in which he's completely coherent. He's a little quirky. He's always been a little quirky. He's old. He didn't do a good debate, but I've seen no evidence that he's senile.
But when he can't, like, he just in the middle of a sentence, he just shuts down and can't finish the sentence. No idea what was going on, and then he just blabbers something.
Have you seen that?
Oh, in the debate, yeah.
Oh, in the debate, yes, he gave a bad. Yeah. I mean, again, he gave a bad debate. Like that was not good.
But I've seen all these things.
What Trump does in that situation is he just like pivots and talks about something completely different. Like, have you listened to his actual speeches? Like, talk about like chaos and word salad and like incoherence. Like that's why I have concerns there too. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you on that, but there's a difference. But anyway, so, what do you make of Hunter Biden and the laptop and that whole story?
I haven't paid much attention to that story. It's like the thing I think I know about that is that there was a problem and that he has admitted guilt or somehow been found guilty, that Hunter Biden has somehow been found guilty and is facing the consequences.
Okay.
That's what I think I know, but honestly, I haven't paid much attention to it.
Okay. What do you think? Do you know what Hunter does for a living?
No, something financial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, Hunter was on the board of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma. Lately, he's been making paintings that people pay lots of money for.
Like Trump and his coins and his crypto.
Yeah, no, but this is the reason this is a little bit different. So he has, like, Hunter has shared bank accounts with his father, and he's selling his artwork. He's never done art before, but now he's selling art for, it's one article here says 1.5 million. I mean, the accusation, the allegation that I've seen is that Hunter is the bag man. Like, Biden has been selling influence to the highest bidder, and Hunter is the one that collects the money. So it's like, it's just influence on American policies. He was doing that as vice president for years, and now he's been doing it as president. And Hunter is the one that goes around to collect the money. It goes into a shared bank account, and then it gets to Joe Biden, his brother, as well. And Bill Clinton did this really, really well with the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation was basically a pay-to-play game while Clinton was president. And from what I've seen, the moment they got lots of donations, his foundation, but the moment that Hillary was no longer like that Trump beat Hillary and she wasn't going to be president, like all the donations dried up and nobody wanted to donate to that foundation anymore. So it's like classic old influence peddling.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a Biden that is like deeply, deeply corrupted in a very, very serious way. And yeah, like Trump does some interesting, shady shit from time to time, but it's peanuts compared to what the other guys are doing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen any evidence of influence peddling or selling. And I think if a politician was going to do that, I would hope they would be smarter than to make it like to have their son collect the money and have it be so obvious. Like it seems like if that's what that is, they're doing a terrible job. Terrible. Like if it's that obvious, like that's really incompetent. So I would be skeptical just for that reason. Um, yeah, I guess my other thought is that in the world that we live in now, it's really hard sometimes to tell what is when we're being manipulated by other governments, by big money, all of that. Like you can seed a lot of doubt without proving anything on either side of the thing. And some of what you're recounting sounds to me like it could be stories that have been implied or like started by either other governments or other corporations, like people who are trying to create that kind of mistrust and that kind of doubt. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that benefits that. Who does that benefit? If if you believe, or other people like you believe that the U.S. government is so deeply corrupt that it can be trusted on no point, right? Who does that serve? And to me, that who that serves is not the American people, but foreign governments who want to weaken the United States and weaken so that we are no longer able to, as a country, come together on policies and national defense and that kind of thing. So that to me seems like what's behind that.
Yeah. Um, but you know, the government has done some pretty shady shit over the years. Have you looked into the church committee?
No, I'm sure the government has done some shady shit. I think pretty much anybody. I think any institution that has significant power, government, corporate, religious, anything else, is likely to do some shady shit and needs a lot of checks and balances in place in order to prevent that. And I think I have a concern that our government no longer has enough checks and balances in place. So,
Yeah. Um, yeah. I was looking this up for the church committee was in 1975 is, as far as I know, is like the last time that there's real oversight of the deep state, the CIA, the FBI, the IRS. And it revealed several things. I'm just trying to find the details
mhm,
here, but you can look it up. But basically, like MK Ultra and COINTELPRO and other programs. So
mhm,
here, I'll just screen share here for your
mhm,
enjoyment. But there's another page that I was finding when I was researching my book. So I don't know if this, but COINTELPRO was, I think it was joined between the FBI and the CIA, which was it was a series of covert and illegal projects conducted by the FBI aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting American political organizations that the FBI perceived as
mhm.
subversive. Um, and uh, it included
I mean, the FBI has pretty much
members of
always done
Congress.
that, I think. Like monitor
Yeah.
what they perceive as subversive American organizations.
No, no, but yeah,
Not saying they
but
wouldn't.
I mean, first of all, it says right here it's illegal. So you would hope that they didn't do something that was illegal, but apparently they did,
Did you
right?
click on those
And
sources? Like
then
how do we know? Like this is Wikipedia, right? Like how do we know?
yeah, the Wikipedia usually don't lies in that direction, but um,
Wikipedia
yeah,
is user, right? So I don't know. I
yeah,
definitely look at Wikipedia, but I try to check the sources because
for sure,
yeah.
for sure, yeah, yeah. My um default is that the Wikipedia is compromised as well, so they're not going to lie in the direction of like calling it illegal if it wasn't. But and the other one is the MK Ultra, which have you heard of that
Only from
one?
you.
Yeah, but that one, so where they like that came out, they had destroyed all the documents, but then they found another stash somewhere that they'd forgotten to destroy. So they were trying to hide that, which was also deeply, deeply illegal. So it's just like we've known, and just the JFK thing, right? The fact that he was assassinated. There's still classified documents. The official story was obviously a lie. Lee Harvey Oswald. Nobody believes that. Nobody believed it at the time. And so that's when the CIA invented the term conspiracy theory to discredit people who didn't buy the official story. So I think the and this is all in evidence. So I think the distrust of the American government, I think, is on their own shoulders.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That doesn't, I wouldn't draw that same conclusion. Like, I think, let's say that the American government has done some shady shit, like covert operations, illegal stuff, like that they've been pushing, like with that MK Ultra thing that you were just looking at. Let's say that's totally real. Like, I don't think that's a reason to say that the entire US government at every level is bought and sold and cannot be trusted to implement policies that are in the people's best interests, which is what I think I hear you implying. So
No, no. I'm just saying I mean, I think most people are just honest, decent people, right? Like 49% of the population gets paid by the government one way or the other. So like that includes, welfare and everything else. But like it's the largest employer. There's a lot of people. Most of them are just good, hardworking, decent people. I think at the levels where it matters, I think it's infiltrated. Yeah, just like the media is can't be
and
trusted. Um,
you
yeah,
think it's infiltrated by people who want to like what's the end goal there? Like if it's infiltrated and there's some secret, like so
power.
there's some secret organization that has compromised the highest levels of our government in all of the areas. And I mean this is what I think you're saying. There's a secret organization that, and the goal for them is that they want power over the US government because they want to make money, because they like what are they wanting to get?
Yeah,
Like they want policies that are in their
money,
favor.
money, money and power, right? So, um, this book is the one that really shook me. Operation Gladio, the unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, and the mafia. Um,
Okay.
Basically making a claim. So after the Second World War, we have the UN, like countries invading other countries, no longer like acceptable. We don't want that. So the US comes up with that's when the CIA is created, and it's this soft power. Like we instead of invading countries, we manipulate populations and do coups and control the media, etc. And so, what happens is that the CIA needs funds for their covert operations. They can't use like budgets from Congress. They need their own source of revenue. They start selling heroin to black people in New York. That's the beginning. So the CIA starts their own drug trade to raise cash, and then they have the problem of how to launder that money, and then they seize on the Vatican, which has a bank that doesn't have any oversight, and so they basically own the Vatican. But then the drug trade expands from heroin to blacks in New York into heroin everywhere, cocaine, etc. And if you look at Mina Airport and Bill Clinton, There's a lot of really shady shit that happened there. Like Bill Clinton was deeply involved in drug trafficking from the allegedly. A lot of people died around Mena Airport when he was governor of Arkansas. So it's basically the way that this landed for me was the CIA is indistinguishable from organized crime, whether it's the mafia, the 'ndrangheta in Italy, or the French organized crime, or the Mexican cartels who are now deeply into not just drugs but human trafficking, which is why, and that's the blob, that's the thing that controls, like, CIA, organized crime, cartels, it's all one. They're the ones that are compromising politicians left and right. FBI is kind of, I don't know what exactly how they're in, but they're like key players again are. We know from the church committee that one of the projects that he was exposed there was Operation Mockingbird, which is about infiltrating news organizations so that they don't say anything that hurts the CIA's agenda. That's documented. We know that for a fact. That we don't know what happened since 75, but there's no reason to believe that they stopped doing that. And so essentially, yes, we have organized crime in control of the biggest, baddest military in the world, and they control they control effectively the Democrat Party. And so they'll install their puppets, and that's why they freaking hate Trump, because he's the one guy that they didn't vet, that they didn't approve of. He's got to go. He's a threat. And if you look at like Epstein, like we all know what Epstein did. He got people to have sex with underage girls so on camera so he could blackmail them. We kind of pretty much know that he worked for Mossad. So I don't see like CIA, Mossad, like the key intelligence service, they're all part of the same system there. Like why haven't we seen that list? Why has none of his clients been prosecuted? Like what happened was the FBI went in and seized those buildings, seized all that material. Now that just becomes part of the blob stash of stuff that they have on people, and that's how that works.
I still don't see why you or people would think that Trump was somehow different, would somehow be different. Because, I mean, there's surely lots of ways he's been compromised. It's just that it seems like somehow people don't really care, like voters don't seem to care that Trump is.
How do you see him being compromised?
I guess I don't. I mean, I would imagine that Trump's sexual behaviors have not always been of the highest integrity. I cannot, I can imagine that his financial dealings have not always been of the highest integrity. Like, I think that there are reasons to think that he's a problematic actor, just as much as any other of those problematic actors. So why would you think that he's not being manipulated by the same blob?
I think if we look at the sexual, everybody knows about his sex shit. It's out there. So
maybe we know all of it. Maybe we don't. Like, it's just fascinating to me that he
but no,
in that same.
So I'm fine with people doing whatever wacky sex shit. What I'm not fine with is from a political standpoint, is that being used to blackmail them, right? So I think Trump shit is out there. Like, he's 78. Like, what the fuck? I mean, I don't know how sexually active he is anymore. He seems to, like, I don't have any reason to believe that he's like that. We have heard all the shit and we don't care.
But have we? Right? Like if you really believe in this conspiracy, okay, from my perspective, it sounds like, but if you really believe in it, why would you think Trump is somehow not also being manipulated by the same deep state? And if not Trump, then what about JD Vance and like all of the people under Trump that are actually the ones with the power? Like, I think we can all probably agree that Trump is not the driving force behind the policies that are being promoted. Maybe we can't, but like, there's a lot of other people there too. So why do we think that it's somehow better to vote for Trump? Like, if you really believe that the entire apparatus is so corrupted, then aren't you really advocating for overthrowing the government, not electing Trump?
Well, I think there are people who are corrupted and corruptible, and I think there are people who are not, or at least less so. Um, I'm not saying overthrow the government. No, I'm definitely on very much about the individual level of integrity, so that people don't take that first step into compromised territory, or if they do, they get uncompromised right
Right.
away. Um, I do see I do see Trump as different in that regard. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Um,
I don't.
and I don't know. I'm sure that the second you become president, the intelligence service is going to sit down with you and be like, "Hey, we know where your family lives. Like, here's some ground rules around here." I think it's very interesting that Trump did not, in fact, release all the CIA files the first time he was in office, even though he promised he would. I think there are definitely failings, definitely shortcomings, definitely things that I would have loved to see more. I have questions. Yeah, I don't know for a fact that he's not compromised or how compromised he is. I don't know. But again, I see the entire apparatus of media and government and everyone else, conspiring to colluding to get the fuck rid of him. And I think there's a reason why. Like, they really don't like him. Like, he's, I haven't heard him, but I've heard Elon say that that if Trump is elected, the Epstein client list will be released, and there's a lot of people who don't want to see that happen, and that's part of the blob. So we could hope that it would happen the second time. I think the first time he was just completely blindsided by how deep the rot was. He had no fucking clue what he got himself into.
Interesting. Let's talk about Elon Musk for a second. We've got
Sure.
14 minutes or so, 15 minutes.
Yes.
Because he's suddenly become a very big player in US politics.
Mhm.
And I personally wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that. Maybe I just haven't been paying enough attention to
Yeah.
him, but he's throwing a lot of money to get Trump elected.
Mhm.
And he's actually campaigning
Mhm.
for him in Pennsylvania. He's
Yeah.
he's giving away $1 million every day to people who sign his petition. And from what I've heard, there's some questions about whether or not that's legal.
Mhm.
So I mean, he is one of the world's richest men, and he is heavily placing his thumb on the scale for Trump. And I wonder
Mhm.
why, given the amount of
Yeah.
government contracts that Musk's companies have and the amount of his wealth that
Mhm.
comes through the US government. Um, yeah.
Say more. What is your implication there? What is your
I guess it's part of the
your
same
read on?
point of like, I don't see them as being somehow them like the Trump organization as being somehow pure and above messy politics, right? Like Elon Musk
Mhm.
is has a lot of government contracts for SpaceX primarily, and but other ones. So he gets a lot of
Mhm.
government money coming in. He is working really hard to get Trump elected or to not let Harris get elected. I'm not sure which. Um,
Mhm.
he
Why do
wants
you think that is?
power in the government. I think he wants it for his business interests. I think he thinks it'll be in his best financial interest if he
Mhm.
gets Trump elected and he has a role in deregulating the industry that
Okay.
he's in. So so I find it and I find it interesting that the way he's doing that is like through money and through campaigning. He looks to me a lot like a Trump surrogate, that like Trump is declining and like not able to do a very good job. So the campaign is putting Elon Musk in his place as like, you get out there and
I
try to like convince
It's
people to vote for
funny.
Trump.
I don't see Trump declining at all. I see him being much more informed now, much more ready
Well,
for
yeah.
what's coming.
Yeah, my point
I
was
don't
really
see
about
him.
Elon Musk and like how
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
like
yeah.
suddenly a major political player.
So, I mean, to me, what happened was that Elon. So we know for a fact that all the social media companies were infiltrated by the CIA and by the DHS and by all FBI and a bunch of these three-letter eight government agencies. Um, That's why the Hunter Biden laptop story, that came out about a year ago in October, last not 4 years ago, last election, October, surprise, right? It was like you couldn't mail a link to send a link through Messenger to other people. If you tweeted that link, your Twitter account would get shut down.
I don't remember
That
hearing
was
that, but okay.
Oh, there's a lot of censorship. Yeah, yeah. And then like 51 former intelligence officials signed a letter saying it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And then like 3 years later, the New York Times is like, yeah, that was totally legit. It was very shady. It was very shady what happened there with that story. And so Elon buys Twitter and cleans house, and he opens up, I don't know if you followed the Twitter files, but he gave these independent journalists access to all the internal Slack threads and all that stuff to find like email servers, et cetera, to find out what happened. And there are all this coordination with the government sending Twitter lists of all these, including tiny accounts that they wanted shut down because they were making fun and like saying silly stuff. And so, yeah, the censorship was huge. And so he buys Twitter, kicks all these people out, and like, yeah, no, you guys can't censor this thing. He's like firmly for free speech, and they just attack him. They go after him like fucking crazy. And like the latest is that the EU, which I despise, that the EU wants to fine him based on not Twitter revenue or X revenue, but revenue in all of his companies combined, which is completely unheard of. If he doesn't comply with EU censorship laws, which are like, the EU doesn't have a free speech amendment like the US in the Constitution, right? So they can be a lot more aggressive. So the reason, and he stated this, and I don't have a reason to doubt him, the reason that he's dove into politics is because after he bought X, politics won't leave him alone. They canceled contracts with him. They've gone after him for crazy things. Like the silliest thing was the SpaceX thing, where they were suing him for not hiring enough asylum seekers. Meanwhile, SpaceX is a regulated company that's not allowed to hire anyone who's not a citizen. And so it's like completely baseless, stupid, idiotic things that they're going after him for. And like, I think there's a thing in the past week or so or two where they wouldn't approve a rocket launch over, again, something completely unrelated. So what he's seen is that since he didn't allow censorship on X and he's been standing for free speech, the government's been coming after him left, right, and center. And if Trump is not elected, they're going to come after him. Like, he will be in jail, I think, literally is his fear. And I think it's legitimate.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's not a choice.
I think you can't launch the rocket thing was because there were some environmental concerns about the rocket. So I'd have to do a little more looking into the hiring piece, but I mean, I don't think the government should leave him alone, right? Like, leave the companies alone. Like, they're regulated for a reason, right? Like, I personally
no, but that's not the accusation. The accusation is that they're targeting lawfare again, right? That they're targeting him with anything that they can to get after him for political reasons, not because he did anything, like, not for factual reasons. And that if he hadn't bought Twitter and stirred the pot in this way, they would have never done this. That's the claim.
Interesting. It's very interesting.
And it's hard to prove, right? And that's how the system works. It's like, show me the man, show me the crime. When you have enough crimes and regulations, which is why I'm like, we need to just reduce the size of government by 95% or something. So there's just a lot less to steal or to manipulate in bad ways by bad actors. It's just too big. It's just too much of it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely there with you. The place where I personally experience federal regulation is around our food-based business, right? Like, we sell a food-based product and are regulated in order to do that. And the system is clunky as all heck and incredibly frustrating and complicated. It is not perfect. but I wouldn't want to live without it. Like I wouldn't want a country in which people were making food-based products and selling them and not having to prove to the government that they were doing it in a safe way.
Who said who was advocating for that?
Well, if we reduce the size of government by 95%, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Because people are going to be making food
Well,
products and not making sure that there's
no, I mean, that's not what we said. No, we still need to regulate, but there's a lot that the government does that it just doesn't need to be doing that can be done better by private. We still need to regulate. The problem now is that because the government's so big and it's so hard to figure out anything, what happens is that we are like the food babe Vani Hari has been documented about like how thousands of toxic garbage is allowed in the US that's not allowed in Europe. And so the same company, Kellogg's here, will make the same product with that's killing people in America. And is like it's doesn't have any of those things in Europe.
Right.
Like so tell me how well that so do we need even more government and then that's going to be fixed? Or what are you suggesting?
Yeah, I guess what I'm suggesting is that the government that we do have be improved, right? Like be streamlined and to be made more effective, have rules that are make more sense. Like there is lots of room for improvement. Like I am not saying that our system exists in some perfect state. There's a ton of room for improvement. I think cutting the government by 95%, cutting the government by 50%, like looking at in terms of money. Like I assume when you say that, you're talking about money. Leaves us in a place where we don't have the resources to regulate the things we do need to regulate. Like I want to live in a
no, I'm not saying don't do it in a dumb way. I'm saying do it in a smart way. And I'm not saying do it overnight. I'm just saying I think we could get everything done better for everybody at like 5% of the current budget.
So that's an interesting place where we could probably come together around some ways to move forward of like what would make sense to cut, what would make sense to keep, what need to be refocused or reoriented. Like when it gets really nitty gritty, then like, but I know that's kind of you get bogged down too in the nitty gritty. But like I think people on both sides of the aisle can agree that government can be streamlined and made more effective. And for sure.
And I would say the fact that it hasn't happened is because the current interests want it to be the way it is. The purpose of a system is what it does.
Well, sure. And also, it's really hard. Like that's very hard and complicated. That's not something that can just be done quickly. You got to get a lot of people to agree on what's the right way to streamline and make more effective. That's going to take some time and be complicated.
And a lot of people have a lot of vested interest in it being the way it is, right?
Yes, I'm sure some people do. Yeah.
A lot of people, of course. Yeah. All right.
This is fun.
This is fun. Yeah. We didn't get to other stuff. I found this really interesting article about Kamala, Kamala's time in San Francisco. That was very fascinating. We'll catch up on that some other time.
Some other time. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Thank you, Beth. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Are we, is that a wrap?
Yes, let's call it a wrap. Yeah. Okay. It's been so fascinating to hear the perspective of other people, right? Like how you see it, because you're not the only one. There are a lot of other people who see it that way too. So it's indicative of a worldview, and I think that's the interesting part.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah,
it is interesting
because we all want good things for the country and the people, right? But the worldviews just dictate the very, very different answers for how to do that.
Or I mean, maybe next time we can talk about like some of those things that are more about like, what is it that we want and what's a possible way to get there? Because it feels like you and I are never going to agree on the worldviews. Like, I don't think we're ever going to take each other's perspectives. And I don't think that that's going to happen in the country. that we're going to be able to agree on worldviews, but we could maybe agree on a problem and a solution to like some segment of it.
Yeah. I see Kate
Next
nodding.
time.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
I'll
have a
head
good
over to the
trip.
other side of the world.
I probably won't
Thank
see
you.
you before you leave. So have a
No.
really good trip. I have not gotten my head back in the game. This was my first thing coming back to work. So if there's
Yes.
things you need from me or whatever, just I'll find them
Cool.
as I go forward and I'll reach out. Um, Same rules apply like while you're traveling, Telegram if I need you. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, you guys.
Thank you.
See
See
ya.
ya. Bye.